Meantime, today, as you know, immigration, migration, number of people coming to the country has been an issue for quite some time. Why? Because the reality is that you know that most of the stuff that you pay for in the state government, well, it doesn't work. There's also too many people that are trying to get into it. We're talking about everything from the O system to finding a place for your kid or their sibling to be able to make it into a public school. We know that there aren't enough houses for the people who are on top of the 25 million people who live here already. And again, can I say, for those that are half listening, I don't have a problem with whence people come or what they believe or what they look like. That's not my issue. My issue is that the facilities that exist for the current 25 million people isn't up to standard of the 21st century. In places like regional Queensland, the rental lines are now so long, it's about 120 people to have a look at a place in Ipswich, or in Melbourne, if you're lucky enough to get the chance to rent a room in somebody else's house, that could cost you $400 a week. You introduce more people with fewer houses, guess what happens? The price goes up. And as we know, Australians have been very clear, and every poll tells us this, that the number of people being brought into the country not to improve the lifestyle of the country or to make you or I feel more comfortable, instead to pump up the bottom line of the budget, to make big business more happy. Well, surprise, surprise, another poll tells us here 62% of people say the current amount is just too high. But this government has got it wrong, exactly as we know for the past 18 months and every day since they came to power. They have got it wrong. Oh, it was all about being apparently post-COVID. But what they really wanted to do was to supercharge a scenario where they could say, we've got a surplus, the other guys don't. So therefore, bring them in, bring them in, bring them in. But as we've talked about, there's a consequence when all of that happens. Now, amazingly, apparently one of the solutions to the government's problems that have been caused by, among others, clueless Claire O'Neill, today was more Claire O'Neill. What do they say about the definition of insanity? Now, as you know, media got very excited today because they're cutting the migration numbers. The government is starting to listen, I think I read on the TV.
The federal government has revealed what it calls ambitious reforms to bring migrant numbers under control.
The Albanese government is tonight promising an overhaul of Australia's migration system will help ease the burden on cost of living and improve our services sector.
International students will undergo tougher English language tests, so-called ghost colleges shut down, and a new skills in demand visa created to fill critical jobs. Applicants fast-tracked within 7 days. Not months.
But guess what? All of it's spin. Yes, there are a few less people, but you've got to send out a search party way beyond the horizon, to be able to actually see when these numbers start to kick in. You see, government always does things in about 4 or 5 year bands. Generally speaking, governments that have no money turn around and say that something big they're going to build or tax cut they're going to deliver is often the never, because really they can just promise it but hope it never gets delivered. That's exactly what happened today, and the media fell for it. As my colleague James Morrow went through in some detail, and did it far better than I'm going to, but I will anyway because we both had the same idea, which was to show you what this government's projections were about the number of people coming into the country. All right? Have a look at this. In 2022-23, we're talking financial years here, 400,000 people were due to come to the country. Then it was 315,000, 260,000 people. The reality, of course, they promised 400,000, they ended up delivering 510,000. They promised 315,000, they ended up delivering 375,000 people. So quick, let's find a cut. Next year supposed to be 260, well that now becomes 250. The next year supposed to be 260, that's now 255. Wow. And 15,000 people. And then the next year, when of course we're off into the never, we've been re-elected and it won't matter, 260 becomes 235. Or let me put it this way. If you put together the projections from 2022 to 2027, that's about 1.4 million people that are supposed to be coming into Australia by June 30, 2027. When you actually put together what has happened in the past couple of years, plus the little cut here, a little cut there, guess what? It's 1.6 billion people. So they turn around and despite the fact that they have delivered way more people in the past couple of years, including the full year they've been in control of the federal budget, where the projections were for 23-24, remember, it was 315,000. The delivery, ended up being more than 500,000 people. So they can afford to say they're cutting now because they've already pre-delivered it. But they think you're stupid. And they know that the press gallery desperately wants to save an underperforming government, desperately wants to pretend they are doing something about a problem like cost of living. Now, of course, what they could do for this is, yes, a little bit on immigration, but they can do way more than this. This stuff, dare I say, doesn't really touch the sides. What they, of course, could be doing is cutting fuel tax, cutting the heavy haulage taxes, and making serious investments that would improve the cost effectiveness of the energy grid. All of those things bring down cost of living, pretending you're doing something about the overall immigration picture, when the reality is that you want credit for the people who haven't turned up here, but you don't want to be punished for the people who already have turned up here. For her part, Claire O'Neill thinks this is amazing.
Our goal is to return migration to sustainable levels.
Today we are announcing a strategy for a better, fairer and a more sustainable migration system.
The way they spin, right? Remember, these are two very problematic ministers. They're two of the three useless amigos. Yet they're now being used to spin that everything is awesome and everything is changing. When the reality is the damage has already been done. What they have over-delivered is what they are now going to pretend to cut back on ever so slightly, meaning when you actually pile the two numbers together, you still end up with 200,000 more people. You see, you lose no matter which way it happens. And if anywhere between 1.5 and about 2 million people end up turning up to the country, guess how many people that is? The entire city that I'm sitting in right now in Adelaide in South Australia. That's the plan between now and 2027. Remember the plan, this government, unaltered, is that by the 2060s, we're going to end up with 40 to 45 million people. They are doing nothing. Oh, and by the way, the polls that were taken, yes, before the announcement, but still ahead of all of the leaking of it, 55% of people still think the numbers that have been put forward by the government today are still too high. What a giant surprise that normal people can see when the wool's trying to be pulled over their eyes, when somebody is trying to BS them directly to their face.